and welcome to Mindful Conversations, where we explore real issues affecting our mental health with our families and in our communities. My name is Lisa Ford, one of your co-hosts. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, clinical director, and owner of Harmony Wellness Counseling and Consulting in Laurel, Maryland. Today, I'm joined by wonderful co-host, Erica Coleman.
Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Erica.
Hello, family. My name is Erica Coleman. I am a certified psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner and the owner of Embracing Tranquility Behavioral Health. And we are here, I guess, today to talk about mental health first aid.
Yes, mental health first aid.
Awesome.
Do you know what that is? Okay, well, absolutely. Mental health first aid is a practice that's used that you don't have to be a professional. It's used in communities with families. It's a evidence-based practice that's designed to help the layman, meaning non-professional, to help their families, their communities, people that they love and support. So that's what mental health first aid is. Why is it important? Do you know why, Erica?
Lisa, that's an excellent question. I appreciate that. So the important thing is that we want people to understand that they don't have to be a therapist. They don't have to be a social worker or any type of clinician to be able to understand when their family is going through something and something is not right? So being able to identify some of the signs, some of the things like we talk about understanding childhood depression. What are some of the signs of that? What does that look like? Because a lot of times our kids or even, the kids in our community may not know how to articulate how they're feeling. So we have to look for their physical signs, some of their understanding their patterns, understanding what does it look like their normal day-to-day, if they're lacking motivation, things of that nature, so that they're able to say, hold on, wait a minute, I may now need a professional, or maybe we can jump in with some other type of coping skill or I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use, but in order for them to be able to jump into action maybe. But I really want people to understand that it's not about being like you're looking down on someone, but just showing that empathy and that compassion, that life may be a little bit lifing more this week. And especially of us getting back into the swing of things, school, all those different things that we have to show. Was there something wrong with my child or something wrong with my family member? If something is lasting longer than a couple of weeks, and everybody goes through up periods, down periods. But if something is lasting a little bit longer, I may say, hold on, wait a minute. What did Daddy learn in mental health first aid? Or thinking of different things like that. So even adjusting to even finding something to learn a little bit more about it, So, but I think that mental health first aid works a lot, and I think it provides that initial support and also allows us to gain understanding about mental health.
I agree. I think that for you, Erica, you're actually working with a lot of children, right? And so it can be this coach. I think we talked about that a little bit earlier. The coach that is actually teaching or being a part of a youth's athletic studies and abilities, right? And so the coach, it can be the grandmother, right? Like you said, family members that may recognize that there's some changes. But also, young age, young adults, it all happens with them. And many things that our young adults are dealing with, the things with social media that comes, that plays with their mental health.
Absolutely.
Relationships. Many of them don't have a lot of interaction. I don't want to generalize, but some of them don't have a lot of interaction with other people. It's all texting, right? Or behind the screen. Right. So those type of connections and trying to develop those relationships could create some anxiety. So it's important for young kids. It's important for young adults, middle age, right? As you move into that next phase of life. By the way, I just turned 60, so.
Happy birthday!
That's important, but middle-aged people, so in the early 40s, going into the 50s, there's a whole change in life, particularly for women, menopause, premenopausal.
Right.
Empty nester, you're about to be an empty nester, right?
I am.
So, those different things affect sometimes our mental health. And this is not mental health. First aid is not meant to be a professional or therapy, but it's also good for people to know just what it is so they can intervene. Even our seniors, we work a lot with seniors. Sometimes when they move into that phase of life when many of their friends, many of their family members are passing, like they're ready to go too. And sometimes it's not suicidal. It's just a feeling of loss.
And loneliness.
Exactly. And just worry. So it's very important on all those different stages.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned the coach because my trainer that I work out with, he trains a lot of younger athletes. And he was speaking about how him understanding the signs and stuff like that, because this generation is a little bit more involved in their emotions, if that makes sense, that he has to be aware of the things that he says, and not to a point of being dumb, like changing his personality or his style, but just being aware of the type of people, that he's around, and being able to identify when somebody can take a little bit more of a stronger approach or when somebody can't. And just, it's funny how you are not even knowing that you're utilizing mental health first aid. And understanding why in your everyday job. So it's not like he is a clinician, he's a fitness trainer, but I think that it's important, and I'm happy that people are starting to recognize it. It makes me excited. It makes our job a little bit easier.
Yeah, it does. Because it kind of helps people. So the coach, the family member can say, hey, have you thought about talking to someone? Right. So it kind of helps, there's a family approval, right? There's recognition by people who love you and support you that this is something okay to do. I think that we just had Mental Health Awareness Month a couple months back, that just breaking down that stigma associated with mental health is very important. And so it's a collective, right? It's a community of people that have to help support the mental health and wellness of everybody.
So question, how do you initiate that? What are some pointers that you would suggest to someone who is learning or interested in understanding mental health first aid? How can they assist someone that they care about? What is the first steps?
Well, one of the things, just so people know, is actually, as we mentioned earlier, evidence-based approach. So there's actually in our communities, at the health departments, local health departments, they actually provide mental health first aid training. Right. Very recently it was held at Prince George Community Health Department had a mental health first aid. So that's one thing, right? If look around and see if you can get any formal training. So we think about CPR, right? This is very similar to CPR, but it's just mental health based. So it'd be helpful to get the training. But in the interim, what do you do, right? So I would think that it's important that if you notice with your family members, if you notice with people that you interact with, people may be more isolated, right? The people or the family member that used to be very social is now starting to be isolated, right? The kids that were good in school with their grades, right? All of a sudden, they're no longer interested in hanging with their peers. The grades are going down. They lack interest in activities, extracurricular activities if they want. So changes in behavior are important to recognize. And so how do you approach that person? As a family member, as a parent, as aunt, uncle, grandparent, you approach it with love and empathy, right? I love you, but I'm noticing A, B, or C, right? Can you help me understand, what has changed? So being able to have a relationship and talk to that family member is going to be important, right? And not being afraid. Sometimes as adults, we are afraid. Sorry, I didn't want to hit my mic. Sometimes as adults, we're afraid to approach those kind of conversations because we don't necessarily want to hear what the response could be, right? But it's important because many kids, many adults, many people sometimes are suffering in silence. Because no one is asking those critical questions.
Remember, we talked about this at an earlier time. I don't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
But we've talked about this in an earlier time show and stating that we have to normalize having conversations, period. So normalizing having conversations will allow this to be an easier transition when something is actually going on that you want to know about or need to know about or want to know how to work through it, right? Because if you don't talk to your family or don't talk to your kids, but then you want to expect them to share with you things whenever they're going through that first relationship, when they're going through, oh, I messed up on the test. And some kids are very, very high strung about their academics,
Yes,
right?
they are.
And even are afraid to let you down. So just being able to normalize having those types of conversations will make it a little bit easier. Before we move on to that, I also wanted to say that there are a couple trainings that are coming up in the Prince George's County area that we will have listed at the end of this show, just for your own viewing pleasure and training and learning and understanding. There are a couple that are coming up that are in August, so it'll be posted soon.
Good. And, I would also say, too, that sometimes, and I'm going to go to where my clinical hat again, it's trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the conversations aren't happening because we didn't learn how to have those conversations, right? So it's generational trauma or intergenerational trauma, where I didn't learn how to have a conversation from my parents. So then I never really learned how to have a conversation with my kids.
Right.
And then my kids don't know how to have a conversation with their children.
Right.
So like, how do we begin to, like we said earlier, just begin to break the stigma, embrace having those conversations, as difficult as they can be.
Right.
For the collective, is the best thing to do. So, if you need support, reach out to us. We can kind of help you begin those conversations.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then I also know that the way that the society is going mm-hmm. and into understanding and breaking the stigma of mental health, that some of the shows that our younger generation mm-hmm. watch mm-hmm. will identify those, have those types of conversations and identify those things, because I've seen it before on a Disney Channel, mm-hmm. Where one of the shows talked about, something was wrong and a parent had that conversation. And so when our kids see something like that, they sometimes can head that, mm-hmm. honestly.
Right.
They can honestly hit it, because I've had it happen to me, and me not knowing how to be an effective parent in the space, and having my kids say, well, hey, I need this from mm-hmm. you. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you need more hugs. All right. So, all right. So,
right.
So figuring
exactly.
out, like,
exactly.
Sometimes there's ways that come from different angles, and not to take, everything as a grain of salt, but still be able to put some of those tools into our toolbox mm-hmm. and use the resources that are around us.
Mm-hmm. You're right. You're so right.
I think it's pretty cool that, it's all collective, like you said,
I think you're right. I think just thinking about like how, the next generation not only may not know, but they can spark. And sometimes we're feeling like, oh, why would you ask me that? Right. But, if you're open and no matter how uncomfortable, it begins those conversations that are important to help embrace everyone's mental health. So I think it's important. So good.
I appreciate mm-hmm. that. And that also helps you to know like when to get started. Because it's not like it's the safe sex conversation mm-hmm. that needs to happen before it happens, right? Like it's one of those things that you have to be observant mm-hmm. and just be in tune and a part of, And I know it's hard, us as parents in our hectic lives and worlds and going to work, and there's two mm-hmm. parent households that have to go to work, and there's so being in tune with our kids and family members in general, because we keep mm-hmm. saying kids, mm-hmm. but family members in general is very, very important. So whenever we do go through that and ask those certain types of questions, like what do you offer in ways of how do we help? Like, so even if we do ask the questions, right, how can we support someone? And they may not even have noticed that there was that shift and that change. How do we make them comfortable in supporting them through our mental health first aid? Jesus, I can't get it together today.
Okay. So and I think I'm understanding the question. I think it's helpful. There's different ways of communication, mm-hmm. right? And so some people are they don't talk very much, mm-hmm. right? They prefer to write. So creating opportunities to allow people to communicate in ways they feel most comfortable. Mm-hmm. Some people don't want to talk, mm-hmm. but they'll write. Right. So journaling,
maybe getting someone to buy a journal.
Yeah. Why don't you buy a journal? Let's write some things down about how you feel, and then we could talk about it. Right. The other thing, some people like now with social media, they get on the phone, in the videos, and
Facebook.
Talk.
What are you thinking about?
Yeah. Talk about
what's on your mind today.
Journal, video journals. Right. Audio journals. Reading books about different things. I think you gotta help create a level of comfortability for the individual as well as the person who's going to help them. Depending on the seniors, some of the seniors don't necessarily may not want to talk, but some are very talkative, right? Some of them are very shameful, right, about things that they've been through and don't know how to talk to their daughter or their son about things that they're going through. Their physical health issues, right? Some of their chronic illnesses. So I think it's important that we create, allow people to communicate in ways that are they're most comfortable. So I would say the first thing is ask, like, okay, we don't necessarily have to talk about it. Do you want to write about it? And then we come back and maybe you can send me a letter, right? I tell people to write letters all the time.
Me too.
You don't even got to send it. You don't. Set it on fire, but it gets it out. So I think just creating opportunities and variety is important.
Coloring and understanding for kids. The love language, because I heard you say a lot about the love language. That's what came to me when you said the different methods and styles on how we can help. And it goes back to what we said earlier in the show, is being in tune. And, so the love language is like, okay, if your child isn't a talkative child, sometimes, like I said, a hug, right? That can break the ice. A nice hug could get somebody to cry. It can get someone to talk. It can get someone to take a deep breath so that they could start to identify solutions within their situation. So just knowing who you're dealing with, like you said to your part, I just wanted to add the hug part because, like I said, I was specifically asked to do more hugs. Right. So it's like, okay, all right. I'm not used to hugging. So learning how, to understand my child's love language. So I think that is really, really great. So as
one more thing to add, that's okay, is like sometimes with the younger population and even some of the older, middle age, playing games with them, right? Sitting down playing the game. We don't have to look at each other. We can look at the screen, and a lot of times that generates conversation based on what they see on the games. Some of those storyboards, some of those stories that occur in the video games can generate a conversation about things that are going on in their lives. So, I think you got to be creative. Netflix
even has games now. Yeah. And that has definitely made family night very interactive for us in my household. So it's been, really, really fun. So like we were saying, that like just finding those family times and things to pick up where support doesn't always look the same way. It doesn't have to be a questionnaire. It could be like finding out where some of the deficits are, just being watchful and understanding and empathetic, and and that person will either talk to you or you can kind of bring it up in a different way, like we said, the journaling, the games, things of that nature. But whenever you feel like it does become too much of a problem and you feel that it's time, okay, maybe time has gone a little bit too far and my approaches aren't working, how would a person find support? Like, where would they go to look to find support for their family member?
Well, there's several different avenues to get support. The first place is kind of start with the primary care physician, right? So if you have a primary care physician who's a part of your insurance, many times they have a network of people that they work with. They can refer you maybe to a potential therapist or someone that can help. If there's need for medication, they can actually help start that process and then make referrals. Other ways, you can look at your insurance companies. Many of them have directories with different people that are in your communities. They're based on your insurance type. They're based on your zip code. If you're like an African American, if you're like a male, if you're like a female, if you're like Caucasian, if you want somebody that's religious. There's a lot of different filters that you can look at.
Absolutely.
Psychology Today, Black girls therapists. There's a lot of different ways that you can actually look, and we can provide that information at the end of the segment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that, because sometimes we don't know where to start. And sometimes we're still in our shame. I don't want to say shameful, but I'll say not understanding fully, just with the stigma of mental health, that something is wrong. A lot of times we don't want to admit like something is wrong right now. Like it's time for me to move on to the next step. So let's normalize that as well.
One other thing, sometimes you can talk to your minister, people from your church.
Yes, because there's counseling. So depending on your church size, there are like, therapists and social workers and things, licensed social workers that are a part of the church, and even lay ministry as well.
Exactly.
Lay therapy ministry, as I was a part of that at my church. So I agree. That is a good place to start. Thank you all for being a part of this conversation. Remember, healing is a journey. Every small step you take, it matters. Be kind to your mind, listen to your body, and permit yourself a chance to grow. We invite you to leave a comment or a question. We would love for you to be a part of our conversation and our community. As we all know, community is very essential to our well-being, emotionally and socially. Have a wonderful day on purpose, and thank you for joining Mindful Conversations.